Hello and welcome to Under the Pallet Wrap with me, Keith Dupres, and Dan Culverhouse. It's episode 6, believe it or not.
Already.
Where has the time gone? Today we're going to talk about returns. Anyone working in supply chain is fully aware of returns. But the paradox is maybe the customer isn't so aware of what happens to a return once they drop it off. It's all built around convenience. But there's a whole industry based around returns. It's the bane of retailers' lives. Today, Dan and I are going to peel back the curtain or the pallet wrap, talk about returns, how they affect businesses, and maybe some stats and some solutions as well. So, Dan, returns, how do they affect the general retailer?
Well, they certainly destroy a lot of margin. I think it's easy when you're a consumer, when you're a customer. You buy your products. Let's be honest, you're almost encouraged to just buy whatever you think you want. So if you want to buy 3 colors to check which one is the right one for you, and maybe 2 sizes, you may buy 5 items and only want one. And today it's become incredibly simple for the consumer to just say, okay, I want to return these back. You just shove them back in the packaging that you got them in, and a courier will either collect them or you can take them to a locker, and you're done. A few days later, you'll get your money back, and you don't need to think about it anymore. But I think the reality is there is an entire industry that is built up to manage what goes on from that point onwards. And my personal view, it's not a sustainable future. I think there are some scary statistics out there. I mean, I think it varies by the type of product, but in general, about 1 in 5 orders returns back to back to its retailer. So 20% of what we buy on average is returned. In fashion, it's quite commonly close to 40%, and I've seen some extreme examples which are much higher than that, which are clearly unsustainable. But we were looking at some stats. Zigzag did a study, and they reckon that £27 billion worth of returns were sent back to online retailers in 2024. So that's 2 years ago now. So you can only imagine what that really is now. So yeah, and I don't think people really get the sort of process that has to happen for a product when it comes back to a returns distribution center. What actually happens to it? I think the first thing we should do really is maybe just go into a little bit of detail as to what happens when a return comes back. So it's picked up by the courier or it's picked up out of the locker. The first thing you can say is the transport back to the distribution center is nowhere near as efficient as it is on the way out. It's not using the same planning. They're just picking up much lower quantities. So generally, it's mostly empty. But you could say, oh, it's a journey that they were on anyway, but that journey is made much more complicated by picking up returns, so they do many more miles. So that's the first bit that costs more. And then when it gets back to the return center, what happens? Or I guess there's some things even before it gets back, right? If it's an international return, there are some complications to even get it back.
Well, when you're starting up as a business, you might well be processing all those returns yourself, processing the labels. There's so much tech out there to make it simple for the customer. That's where the money seems to be generated. For the businesses themselves, it's always let's try and make it as simple for the customer as possible. Try and make it simple for us. But when you get stuff back in the wrong size boxes that add to freight costs, you get things sent back that haven't been packaged by the guidelines. It's generally like a jumble sale, the returns area of most places. I've worked across the industry. Thankfully, it's a lot less for cosmetics. box, and there's a lot more stringent rules that say if you open it, you can't, if you use it, you can't return it. It doesn't stop people trying their luck. But with clothing, it's pretty difficult. It's proven pretty difficult. You get things returned with different carriers. You get bills from carriers popping up. What's this? You invest time to work out what it is. It's a return from someone. Someone in a far-flung tropical island that's decided to return something while they're on holiday, or their assistant has. You've got a huge duty bill. Uh, it's it it's regulated chaos. People making the best of it. It's quite often the return section is a pile of unruly boxes, and everybody
They're always frightening
checking it.
areas
Uh,
in the BC normally, aren't they? Even the best, most organised, when it's still, because all the packaging you get back is it's used packaging, so the boxes are all half destroyed or the bags are half open.
yeah, in a warehouse, it's you want to put the resources where the value is, or the perceived value is, which is inbound picking, packing, put away. Uh, but you need people on returns, but often they're overworked. You can only afford to put 6, 7, 8 people on returns. They're beleaguered, they're stressed. They spend a lot of their day troubleshooting, trying to work out what things are, whether they can be sold, looking for approval. I mean, the Zigzag report says something like 46% ends up not being resold,
Yeah.
which is astonishing considering, you know, people are supposed to just be trying these on.
Yeah, well, I think it's one of the key things that, I guess it's worth just describing a little bit is that, so, when you drop it off and it's collected, once it arrives back in that warehouse operation, it has to go through an enormous sorting system. So you have to sort it out into like the different types of product. Then those products then have to be opened, inspected, graded, and decide whether is it as good as new and just needs repackaging, or does it need a little bit of rework? And then, eventually some of it will make it back to stock, but a lot of it doesn't. And as you say, nearly, 40, we were reading a study earlier, 44% of returns never go back out to another consumer. And what does that mean? That means that they're probably put into landfill a lot of the time. It just gets dumped. Not always, and then sometimes it is recycled and reused or repurposed, but it's a huge cost. And when you listen to that complexity of process, you can understand why a return can cost something like 60% of the original value of the product. And then you kind of like get that into your head. So, okay, so you've made the product, you've shipped it around the world, you shipped it to a customer, and obviously you've earned the revenue from that. But then 60% of what that costs is what it costs to bring it back. And if 30 or 40% of what you're shipping out is coming back, and it's costing you 60% of the value of that product, you can see where margins are disappearing, right? I mean, it's phenomenal. And
Oh,
that's not
absolutely.
without even getting into the impact on the environment. Right? There's a huge sustainability impact as well.
Well, of course, with digital product passport coming in, the industry is, or the government are trying to deal with this problem of landfill and disposal. But it's hard to say that many retailers have ready or have caught up with that. It's been allowed to fester for some years, decades now. Uh, it is time we caught up with ourselves. But how do we prohibit these returns? How do we address the subject? Everyone's tried. It was always considered that if you didn't make returns easy, it would affect sales.
Yeah, people wouldn't buy it, right? I was just reading another little stat here, which I thought was interesting. That 62% of shoppers online admit to what is referred to as bracketing, which is ordering multiple sizes or colours. So they know that they only want one, but they'll order three. So 60% of people do that. It's and as you say, when as online ordering built up and started, this was a really big topic, and I guess it was felt that if you didn't offer easy returns, people wouldn't use it, and therefore that revenue avenue wouldn't open up. It's probably true as well. I'm not suggesting that was a mistake. I think it is a reality that to create this online market of ordering, it had to be easy. But I think it's now reached a point that it is a huge industry now, and we need to recognise that we need to get better at it. And you can't keep delivering, with this, because ultimately, whilst we can say, oh well, we want the ease. I'm not going to do it if it's not simple. But the cost of your product is heavily impacted by this. There is a large amount of margin, or of within that cost of that product, there is a significant portion that is added to pay for the returns, because companies have to pay for it. So it has to be included into the price of the product. So as much as people will say, I want that ease and I want that ability to do it, you also have to accept that the price of that. I mean, look, we're in the midst of a fuel crisis at the moment, availability crisis. So prices are sky high. Everything about returns involves fuel as well. Not just the fuel to move, but the fuel to power the warehouses, to power all of the equipment that does the sorting and stuff. And all of that price is going up 20-30% at the moment. Guess what? Prices of products are going to rise as well. And I know we can say, oh, inflation's not that big, but we all know that inflation is a managed stat, and it doesn't reflect the true cost of changing cost of products. So there's a cost element to it. There's a huge sustainability element to it. I mean, we talk about being more and more environmentally aware and want to buy from companies that source and make their products effectively and in a sustainable way, but we still want to be able to return them all as well. Well, people need to understand the environmental impact on that. It's enormous. And the two just do not fit together. You can't be environmentally aware and then believe that you can return 40% of what you send. It doesn't work. Numbers won't add up. Can't keep doing it.
So what do we do about it? I always, from a continuous improvement background, considered a root cause. So, wherever I've worked, there's always analysis over reasons for return. Of course there is. It's very monitored and analysed. It's a subject at the front of most businesses. Um, so the reason is generally size and fit. Occasionally it will be an incorrect order. I think you've got a real big problem as a business if incorrect product was the main reason for return. You've got other bigger fish to fry there.
Your control to solve it.
Yeah,
That's your
exactly.
problem, not customers, and you can fix that problem.
And that's difficult if you are a retailer, because you are obviously selling stock from multiple brands. But even as a brand yourself, selling your own products, working with designers, it's just as big a problem.
Yeah.
So, you can listen to customer feedback and look at the demographics of the customer and try and work out the perfect size and fit, but that's clearly never going to happen. I think if you have detailed product information, you can help it. You have decent product information. You can be as informative as possible. Information, guidance, but it hasn't seemed to have removed the problem. So, at the moment there's a bit of tech going around. Submit your dimensions, and AI, can review the size and fit a little bit more accurately. I mean, it's new.
I firmly believe that there is a real opportunity there. We look at what AI is doing and what it can do, and on my phone, I can measure items on my phone, very easily, and then based on all that information that you shared, that company can send you the ideal size. You could get into the luxury business where it actually makes it to your size, right? It can do an online, a proper scan of you. The technology is there. It can be done without a doubt, and that, because I guess there's two parts to this whole story for me. There's how do you prevent returns, and then how do you manage the returns that you have to have in a better way? And that technology exists.
I'm a big believer in eliminating at source. Just to be devil's advocate here, do you think people would have a concern sharing their dimensions with the business to that level? Does it lead to increased data requirements? I mean,
Yeah,
sharing it absolutely everything with a
it could,
business.
but we're happy to share our credit cards, right? I mean, what's worse for you, sharing your credit cards with someone emptying your bank account, or someone knowing that actually you're a size 36 trousers and not a 32 that you claim? I mean, come on. For me, it's like, yeah, of course we have to manage the security of it. With the way, if you have the way that apps work and stuff, all that information can remain on with you and not actually be sent to the retailer, or it can be encrypted. Yes, that is a problem that needs to be overcome. But my God, the things that we do share online, I don't believe that the size of your waist is the most interesting.
I absolutely see the benefit of this. I mean, I think people would have quite a lot of fun engaging with a website or an app in that respect, trying on clothes wherever they are. I
Exactly.
think it would
I think they're a lot of
revolutionise it
fun.
myself.
You could see the marketeers turning this into like a party where you have a bunch of people around, and you have a shop, and you can, you know it'll be on your TV. You could do a catwalk on the TV. That you could have so much fun with. People could really make something of this and make it into a real thing. I just think if we really said we cannot sustain returns like this any longer, it's destroying our environment, it's destroying businesses, it's making products unaffordable. Let's do something about it. Then this technology would arise, and it might bring returns down by 10%, and then the following year it might bring it down by another 10%. But it's all good progress, and it's all helping us get to a more sustainable future. And I don't just mean environmentally; I just mean when you look at the online retailing process, it's a frighteningly expensive operation, and it can't carry on that way. We have to drive innovation and adapt a new approach. And anyway, so that's the prevention. But then I guess you're still always going to have some returns, right? I mean, it's always, you can't eliminate it, but if you can cut it back to what really does need to be,
Well,
then
it
you
needs to
start
be
looking at
significantly reduced.
how do you do the return process more effectively? And I guess there's that interesting statistic we talked about at the start around serial returners. I can't. I'm trying to find it now, but um, there was a really interesting statistic that said that 11% of shoppers generate more than 25% of the returns. So these people are considered to be serial returners, and they just buy and buy and buy and then return.
Is it just the highest spenders, the people who buy more, are likely to actually return more? Or is serial returning a major issue that needs to be addressed
Yeah,
by businesses? What do you do?
good questions. Stats are very good at creating a headline, but you do need to, as you say, to get in, understand behind what's behind that, and where the details sit. And I don't disagree with that. But what I would say is, so when we start talking about how to manage returns, wearing once and then returning is a big problem. And I think there's already some good solutions out there. I've seen a great solution where you photograph your return in some detail. You have to take a few photographs, and then an AI tool will look in detail as to see whether there's any damage, any signs of wear, etc. And we'll grade it automatically. And sometimes it will refuse the return on that straight away. But what the process does is you can build up a profile of whether you're a good returner or a bad returner. If you're a good returner, it becomes simpler. Maybe it becomes cheaper. And there's a company out there, and that solution is out there in the market. It's quite new. I'm sure it's still growing, but using technology to then analyze whether, and also then it can say the value of that product is not worth returning. So we can see, yes, it is damaged. You can keep it, you can wear it to do your gardening or whatever, but we'll give you a return. Rather
Yeah,
than
it's easier to just give credit.
most people would still wear it, even if it is not perfect, if they didn't have to pay for it. And that's not necessarily the right answer, but I think utilizing some of that technology to analyze what you want to bring back before you do it, again, means there's a lot of movement and sortation and grading that gets avoided. So the retailer is operating at a much better operating cost because, again, a bit of technology is reducing it down a bit. It's reducing the number of returns down. It's not the answer to everything, but again, it's another opportunity to.
Well, I'm working on one at the moment as we speak. I'm helping a business with their returns process. Technology is great. It simplifies everything. It allows, well, the hidden side, we go back to the hidden side, the absolute nightmare of authorizing returns. Now that's been automated. It's just a push of a button, like you say. The information's much more useful. The shipping is up to you. You can consolidate it. Returns, in the past, it was always the same carrier. Let's use our carrier account for economy of scale. Now, obviously, it's coming back in a consolidation and it's a lot cheaper and it's a bit slower. But for every plus, there's still, with returns, another thing to look at. So you're working with these businesses, they make that one step extremely easy. But when you've got a complicated logistics flow, or you're a slightly different business, you've got the complexities of how do we return these to the country of origin, duty free, like we touched on before. You have to have experts in the team, and you have to build these processes out with the supplier and with the carrier. Not always easily done. Another massive opportunity in the market, probably, to build something that supports that customs flow globally. It's straightforward when you've got a warehouse in one country, comparatively so. But yes, you make one bit simpler. You look at the cause and effect. You make the returns easier, but then you actually give yourself another problem downstream. I think the industry is missing something quite holistic. It is such a big problem, isn't it? It affects so much of the supply chain. At the moment, it's being addressed in bits. So to go back as well to a previous episode, the government regulations are great. They're making it the suppliers issue, the businesses issue, the retailers issue, rather than the customers. Great. We've got a grey area on whose responsibility it is when it comes to returns because you're allowed to buy and return as much as you like. But that is helping. But yes, there's a whole host of things to address in trying to meet those regulations. It's not as simple as this or that. There's a whole lot of thought that needs to go into this.
Here's a question then. Do you think retailers will get away with charging for returns? If we wanted to drive a change, everybody's environmentally and sustainability aware. If the retailer said, okay, returns, we now need to charge a nominal fee, do you think customers would accept that?
I think there's already some proof that it doesn't, it's not accepted universally. I don't have the figures to hand, but it's a question that gets asked more and more of me by my clients. What should we do? Charge or not charge? Often it really depends on their margin, like you say, and their customer base. It's not a straightforward answer. I think some charge could be accepted, and that happens a lot. Like it used to be free, but now I see more and more that there is a charge, £10, etc. It claws back some of the cost. It makes the customer think twice. But then does it affect future sales? Yes, it might. There is a correlation.
Yeah,
I think that offering credit instead of replacement or refund is often a
yeah,
good way to go because it continues to drive shopping within the website.
yeah. And I also think I also agree that I think just recharging is going to have quite a negative impact on a company, on a retailer. And I think the only way that that would really be able to be adopted is if it became legislation and you had to, and then everybody'd have to do it, and therefore customers would just have to deal with it. But I'm not sure it's necessarily the right thing. I do think that there's opportunity, as you say, to offer credit or a lot of things that you buy, right? You've been wearing their shirts for years. I wear this brand of shirt all the time. I know what size fits. So when I buy them, I don't ever return them because I know what I'm buying. There should be an option to be able to accept no returns and therefore get a discount off what you're buying. So accepting that we have to have that cost built in. But if I commit at the point of purchase, because I've been buying these trainers, they're the 15th pair I've had. I know they fit. I don't need anything. I'm happy to buy them on a no returns agreement, and that takes some of the price off. You know, I think
I agree.
that might encourage people to do it more. And it's about changing the mindset of how we purchase, right? And I don't think you're going to
Certainly.
eliminate it because when it's online, you're going to need some choice. Technology can help us, but there will still always be some. But having some options to buy cheaper because you commit to not returning it, or you commit to if I return it, I have to pay to return it, then I think that might drive a start of a change in mentality. It just gets people to take a moment and think about it. And I actually do. Actually, I don't. I won't return this. I've been buying this stuff for years. I'll take the no returns option and have 5% off, 2% off, whatever it is.
I think it's something to look at, like a lot of things, isn't it? There's so many businesses coming up now that are driving resale, uh, and repurposing communities, swapping clothes, etc. Vintage is doing massive. There's a separate issue around, brands waking up to that and adding value to their own proposition and building their own communities and bringing money back into their businesses because people are finding it easier to resell their products
Yeah,
online in other ways. And it's an opportunity that the businesses are missing. There's loads of great companies out there working on
I
that
love the likes of
proposition.
Vinted. I think
Um,
Vinted drives a great mindset of saying,
yeah,
just because I don't need it anymore, there's still value in this product. It can still be utilized. And the
there
growth of
needs to be
growth
channels.
of Vinted, the growth of eBay, it shows there is a huge market for reselling items, and therefore that should be so encouraged. And we do it, and it works, right? You get
It's the
people love
next. I was going to say it's the next big thing. It already is a big thing. It's already massive. My daughter is testament to that. She's 18. She only really buys resold items.
brilliant.
Um, it's for brands to take note of that.
And I think that will come, right? The brands will start offering their own, version of it.
In marketplaces, it's a perfect place to drive community. But you're right, it's a mindset thing. If it's not there, if there's nothing to drive the behaviour, and so much focus for 20 years was on making returns easy, like the invisible problem. If we make it easy, we'll drive sales. There is so much opportunity to
Yeah,
build community. I mean, don't forget how expensive acquisition is, customer acquisition. This type of thing can help you build that lifelong relationship with the client. And it's I think a lot of brands are quite slow on the uptake. You get a lot of environmental claims from certain brands because they're offsetting. They're offsetting for every order you buy. That no, there's a much bigger picture. It goes back to our question about what happens next, and it ultimately ends a lot of the time, unfortunately, with something sitting on a landfill somewhere driving customer behaviour, it has to start with the retailer. The regulations have to also support it, and the customer has choice. They'll make a responsible choice.
Yeah, you just took the words out of my mouth. That was one thing I was, last week we spoke about the ethics of within the supply chain and who has responsibility for what. There is a tendency for consumers to feel it's not my problem, and I think our buying habits drive those companies to some degree. It's a little bit of a circular argument that which who drives what, but everybody needs to take some responsibility and say, come on, this is not right. This is not the most optimal way. We need to find better ways. I need to buy better. I need to look at ways to purchase in a more responsible way. We all like to say we buy products that are green or are locally sourced and all that, and I absolutely encourage it. Do it myself. But we've also got to look at the way that we buy. That if we buy all those, nice organic wool, but we send 3 out of 5 back every time we purchase them, you're destroying the good stuff about what you're doing by forcing an expensive and unsustainable returns process. So yeah, I think there is a lot that people can just in their minds say, I'm not going to do this anymore. Take a bizarre tangent. It's a bit like smoking, right? When smoking stopped being cool a while ago, and it's amazing how we've moved away from it. We've got to make it not cool to buy endless products and then return them. And whilst I think there's a lot of consumer behavior to work at, that consumer behavior is heavily, heavily influenced by the retailers. And the retailers need to find ways to encourage more responsible buying. And I get the little bit of an oxymoron there is that, well, why would we want to encourage people to buy less? Well, if they're buying more but returning more, you're not actually making any margin from it. You're actually, as your business grows and your returns grow, your margin is being eroded. So you're doing more and making less. So it does make sense. Responsible retailing does make sense. And is the most profitable way. And it's just about finding the right messaging and starting to turn this tanker. It's a big, big industry. It's not going to revolutionize overnight, but if we put some focus on it, I think you can make some changes that will make it a more sustainable business.
Well, like a lot of things, as you mentioned, it's like turning a tanker. That's a big old clunking tanker we're talking about here. It takes a brave innovator, actually a revolutionary, to change the way. Just how online fashion took revolutionaries in the retail industry. There are some great, great innovators out there that I champion regularly. You've got loads and loads of great businesses out there who are trying to tackle this issue, but the brands themselves have to also be brave and they have to innovate and they have to take some chances. Tough times, tough decisions. But I guess to close, if we were to advise a founder how to tackle their returns here and now and what to think about, what would we tell them?
I think, look for solutions that will encourage responsible buying, that will encourage or help people size correctly. And I know for a small business that's not necessarily the simple. So when we're talking about founders, I'm also talking about entrepreneurs. Come on, people, let's use some of this incredible technology to find some solutions, because it needs to be an industry-wide solution, right? You can't have my startup who's providing great T-shirts to find a systemic solution that's going to give people a great AI impression of what they're doing. But come on, entrepreneurs, come up with a way of getting sizing and being able to make choosing what you buy fun, but getting it right. That would be one. And then for a founder of a new retailer, is think very carefully about the offer you can make to encourage people to buy responsibly. Is it that if you commit to not returning, you can get a discount? Something like that. But just consider how you might be able to make an offer, not just if you return it, I'm going to charge you, because that's pretty negative. But give people the opportunity to save the money by saying, if you commit to not returning, there's a discount in there. So I think that's where I would be focused. Sure, you and I, our bread and butter is about driving efficiency in a process, and there's a huge amount of work we can do there, and we're available for all of those things if a retailer wants to look at that process and find, because there's always a lot of money that can be saved in that process. But really, if I'm starting, it's how do you prevent, and how do you prevent them happening, and how do you encourage people to buy responsibly?
I think my advice would be a step backwards, or a step before that. Um, don't neglect returns. Don't see them as an add-on. Collect the data. Build a framework so you know why things are being returned. You're looking at the manufacturers. You're looking at the reasons. You're monitoring that from day one. You're not just looking at the outbound. You're looking at the returns process too. Why are things being returned? How are they coming back? What do they cost you? Get that measured in line with the rest of it from day one. Even if at the beginning, I've only got 4% returns. Yes, you haven't opened up to all the markets yet. You've still got to keep on top of the returns.
One little thing that's just while you were saying that, just reminded me of that challenge of, once that all those returns have been processed and they're then sitting back in stock, and they might not be grade A that can go back out, is don't dwell on doing something about that stock, because you always get this thing, we'll put it in a sale, or, and this stock ends up sitting around for years and years, and people don't underestimate the cost of just holding on to this stock that you don't know what to do with. Have a policy, have a process, and rigorously follow that process, so you don't just end up building this mountain in the background and renting warehouses full of clothes that you can't sell, because I see it happens a lot.
Yeah, of course you do. Things getting a bit out of control. We'll deal with it later.
Yeah.
It goes back to the 5 S's, doesn't it? Sort. What is this? What is this doing in my warehouse, and why is it there? Keep questioning. Deal with them from day one.
Absolutely.
So on that note, it seems like a good time to close. We will be back with more interesting topics. We have a guest planned in one of our next episodes, which is a first. We're looking forward to that. But for now, see you next time.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think interesting conversation today, something that I think we're both pretty darn passionate about, and just want to see change. But hope everyone enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and most of all, comment. We really want to know what you think. If you've got ideas that you want us to talk about, stick it in the comments, and we'll pick up those topics and talk about what you want. So thanks for listening. It's something we enjoy very much. Do subscribe. We'll see you next week. Thank you.